Welcome. Coffee and Sports, the morning show with Chris and Mo on a Monday morning. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Happy Monday. Getting ready to get into some sports. Let's go.
Mo, let's start off with some Monday morning headlines for our listeners. We're going to start off with Victor Hovland. He wins the Tour Championship. Mo, I don't follow golf that much, but I wish I was better at golf because this guy wins 18 million. 18, good for him. I mean, Mo, I played my experience in golf is putt putt mini golf, and I'm pretty damn good, by the way.
You
Pretty
just took
damn
the words
good.
out of my mouth. I can work those bunkers and bounce stuff off, and I'm pretty. If they only had a mini golf tour,
Right. What are we saying, Mo? We need to figure that out because when it comes to driving the ball, I got nothing. I have nothing on that. But you go
you and
putt
me
putt,
both.
I am there all day. Simone Biles made not her return, but she made her winning return to the world of gymnastics. She wins the U.S. all around. She clinches the title with a record-setting 8th time. So great to see her back doing what she does best. CJ Stroud is officially named the Texans starting quarterback. I don't think we had any doubts that was going to happen. But it was made official, so that is always good and what we like to see. And then there was an epic finish to the Little League World Series. Mo, I don't know if you're a Little League World Series guy. I didn't see it happen live. I don't really watch the Little League World Series. I saw it on TikTok, but there was a game-tying grand slam followed by a walk-off home run the following inning. And the home run was hitting against a team that hadn't given up a home run to that point. So exciting stuff in the world of Little League Baseball. But Mo, let's talk about something kind of near and dear to your heart. You no longer have Trey Lance as a San Francisco 49er because he has been traded to the Dallas Cowboys for Mo, and I could not believe this. He was traded for a 4th-round draft pick. I didn't think he was going to be worth that much. I guess it doesn't surprise me that if a team was going to overpay, it would be the Dallas Cowboys. So, Mo, let's start there. What are your thoughts on the value that the Niners got back for Trey Lance?
So to put this all in context, let's remember they gave up 3 number ones, a bunch of number twos to move up to get him. So in light of how he's performed, and at least as what he looked like with the Niners, and to be fair to the young man, he was injured. He really hasn't played that much with the Niners, but what you've seen of him, it didn't look promising. When you put out as much as you did, when you sacrifice the assets that they did to go get him, you're expecting a franchise quarterback. You're expecting somebody that's transcended, that's going to turn around your franchise or elevate your franchise to new heights. And that didn't really happen for him. So to get a 4th-round pick back, it sounds like good value, but when you realize what they gave up, I would say that they're just grateful to get anything back at this stage. So they got a 4th-round pick back. The only way it's ever going to balance out is when they use that 4th-round pick, they get a player that's transcended. That'll make up for all the number ones they lost getting Trey Lance. Now, to Dallas's case, to me, it's a 4th-round pick is substantial, but it's a low-risk move. You already have your starting quarterback. Dak's in his 20s. But if Trey Lance can develop, because he is still a young man, he's 22, 23 years old, maybe within their system, he might flourish. At least he will have time on his hands because he goes there knowing he's not going to be QB1. So this might be a better, and we talked about this just might be a better situation for him to learn the game better, get into his playbook, and buy himself some time to continue to develop. I actually think it's a good move for both clubs.
Now, Mo, we talked about Trey Lance going to a stable situation. We talked about Trey Lance, and you're right. We talked about him going to a place where he isn't going to be QB1, where he knows that QB1 is already established. But, Mo, then I look at it and I say to myself, well, damn, Jerry Jones does some things. and he does some things that we all don't always think are the most intelligent things. Are we looking at a situation, Mo, where do they actually see Trey Lance as potentially the heir apparent to Dak Prescott? Are they potentially looking to get out from under Dak's contract at some point here? And they think that Trey might be a guy sooner rather than later that can do that? And I only ask this because I get it. On the surface, it's a silly question to ask. But then you look at Jerry Jones in his comments, and he says things like, Dak's going to be the one with his leadership to take Trey Lance to the next level. What is he talking about? Mo, Dak doesn't even have the respect of his own players.
Right.
Dak has Diggs cussing him out and disrespecting him in the middle of practice because he feels he can speak to QB1 in the face of the franchise that way, because apparently there's no accountability on that franchise. So what is Jerry Jones talking about? And is this potentially a threat to Dak in the short term?
I don't think that in the short term it's a threat. But if you're Dak Prescott, you know this season is all about you, right? When you look at the talent that Dallas presents on both sides of the football, everything really hinges on how well he plays. So I don't think he's worried about Trey Lance taking his job this season. But with the added pressure that he has on him, when your head coach says we're going to give Dak an opportunity to be more of a playmaker, we're going to put it all on Dak. If the Dallas Cowboys come up short, and I mean short in the sense that they don't make a run at least to the conference championship game, if they're not at least there, then yeah, I mean, going into next season, you know how Jerry Jones is. He'll turn around and he'll say, you know what? It's an open competition next season, right? He will turn around that quick, and it will be an open quarterback competition, and he will actually hype up Trey Lance. Not to say that Trey Lance still can't develop into a good quarterback, but if you're Dak Prescott, I think it is additional pressure. Not that he's going to come up on behind you right now, but what if the Cowboys, for whatever reason, with all their talent, get off to a slow start? What if they're 3-7? You know how this goes. When you're 3-7 and the team's struggling and you're loaded on both sides of the ball, the fan base's favorite player is the backup quarterback. It happens that quick. And with an owner like Jerry Jones, that's like times 10.
I'll tell you right now, Mo, if Dallas gets off to a 3-7 start, you better call every Cowboy fan you know and make sure they're okay. There will be, Mo, it will not be good. Dallas Cowboy fan will be exploding if they get off to a 3-7 start. But Mo, something we've talked about here previously on the morning show are comments that Mike McCarthy has made about how he wants to put more on the plate of Dak Prescott this season. And he has alluded to making him a playmaker. But Mo, maybe what he meant to say is he wants to make him a play caller. Because during the final preseason game, who was calling the plays for the Dallas Cowboys? It was QB1. It was Dak Prescott calling the offense, leading scoring drives with his play calling abilities, Mo.
I thought he did a better job than the coach.
And that's the thing, Mo. Like, what do we do? Why is QB1 calling your plays? Well, he wants to come out and Dak wants to say, listen, guys, I don't need to play in the preseason. I am focused on week number 1. I am ready to go when the games matter the most.
Right.
And then you got your boy calling the Mike. We know you already can't do that well. We already know you struggle calling plays. The last thing you need to do is have someone on your team who, by the way, that's not his job. By the way, he's not experienced doing that, and he's already doing it better than you. Why, Mike? Why are you doing that to yourself?
I think he found a way to diminish himself without trying to, because they don't really, you know this, they don't let Dak Prescott call plays. He doesn't walk up to the line of scrimmage and do a Peyton Manning and change the play that was called. He doesn't really have those privileges, and it's interesting to see him. It actually goes to show you, to credit Dak, how much he's into his playbook, how well he knows the plays and knows the system. He knows it better than his head coach.
And to Freddie's point in the comments, Freddie said, I mean, Rodgers did that as well. Freddie, let's be honest. Nathaniel Hackett isn't running that offense. Aaron Rodgers is running that offense.
No question.
So we get that Big Nate is there. But let's not be silly and think that, Aaron Rodgers isn't the one who's pulling all the strings on that offense with the Jets. So he might allow Nathaniel to say things into the headset, but Aaron's the one running that offense for Big Green.
He's gonna call whatever play he wants to call. You know that, and I know that.
Mo, at this time, hey, we have a guest. We love having guests here in the morning show. And at this time, we are going to welcome to the show the man, the myth, the legend, JG's going to be in the house. What up, JG?
Hey, morning, fellas.
Good morning.
How's it going, sir?
It's going good. It's another day. I can't complain about it.
Before we jump into, apparently, the fire sale that is going to be the New York Mets for the foreseeable future, which, by the way, we were told wasn't going to happen, JG, but that's okay. We'll get there in a second. Before we get there, I want to discuss a little more football with you. So Bleacher Report recently threw out this list of wide receivers, and Mo, this goes along with what we're doing here at the morning show with our greatest wide receiver duo list of all time. More to come on that this week. But Bleacher Report tossed out 5 wide receiver duos that they think are going to be overrated or underrated coming into the season. So this is the list that they came up with. From Chicago, they have DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney. From Denver, they have Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, and we all know that Jerry Jeudy has a hamstring thing going on right now. From Jacksonville, they have Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk. From Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. And then from the Washington Commanders, Terry McLaurin and Dotson. So, gentlemen, I want to kind of open this up. Obviously, there's some talent within those wide receiver duos, and I understand why some of them made the list. But, Mo, looking at those 5, which one do you think has the best chance of popping off in the 2023 season?
I really would go with the Washington duo with McLaurin and company, because when you look at what they can do and what they've done with a rotating quarterback situation, if Sam Howell, if he's steady, if he's consistent, those two guys are both playmakers. You can argue that McLaurin's a number one and the other guy, Dotson's almost a number one in his own right. Like, what's great about both of them is not just their route running, but their ability to run after the catch. These guys can make people miss. They've got speed, the change of direction. I just think they're both natural playmakers. If I were going to rank them, they would be number 1, and the Pittsburgh tandem would be number 2, because I also think that their quarterback, he's going to elevate his game. He's going to be a better version of himself. His development is on the rise. With him playing well, they're going to set him up for success this season. Not to mention, Pittsburgh did something really smart this offseason. They bolstered up that offensive line, so that means that you're going to get a better version of Najee Harris, a young quarterback's best friend, a good running game, and a productive tight end. They've got playmakers on the outside as well, so I would have them number 2 if we were ranking these 5.
JG, what direction are you going in, sir?
Well, for what Mo said about Najee Harris, my fantasy football team is hoping that's the case for Najee. But I do like the Steelers combination. George Pickens was, how he was overlooked last year in the draft. I don't understand. I know he was hurt a lot in college, but I mean, again, you put the tape on, and he was an amazing talent at Georgia. How you get overlooked, that's shame on the NFL and the teams for doing that. If I had to go with the top in this 5, I'm actually going to go with, and Mo mentioned the quarterback for Steelers in Pickett. I'm going to go with a team that has the better quarterback of the 5 that are listed, who already moved up and ascending himself in year 2 and is going to have an even better year in year 3. And that's a duo in Jacksonville with Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk. Ridley, I know, missed a year with the gambling suspension. But we kind of forget how good Calvin Ridley was in Atlanta the last couple of years. He started becoming better than Julio Jones. And I know Julio a little bit older at that point, but we were talking about he surpassed Julio that last year in Atlanta before he got suspended, before Julio left as well. And you're putting him now with a young quarterback. And again, Matt Ryan was a good quarterback. at the time. But you have a young quarterback who is putting himself in conversation as a top 10 quarterback in the league. If he has another great year, we could probably say he's a top 7, maybe a top 5 quarterback if he continues in his direction. Trevor Lawrence. Ridley and Kirk is going to complement each other, though, because Kirk is the speedster. He's going to get open a lot. It's going to be used downfield. Ridley can go downfield, but he's going to be used quite a bit in the intermediate to mid-range routes. He's going to get a lot of catches, a lot of balls are being thrown his way, a lot of opportunities to get yak yards as well. That's a scary thing for Jacksonville because you talk about a team the team itself is ascending, and they got that. They were a little bit a year ahead of schedule last year. The expectations are high. Throw in Calvin Ridley with that group. As far as for what they can do and what Calvin Ridley brings to the table, I think that they have the better opportunity to have a great season of the 5 and have the best season of the 5 that are listed. And I think that's going to be the case. And for Jacksonville's season and to meet the expectations, they're going to need Calvin Ridley to be able to have that year. Christian Kirk going to have to have that another step since they're paying him a lot of money too. On top of it, they're going to need both of them to have a great season. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville's duo of Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk.
And I like that a lot. And to your point, JG, I mean, I was banging the drum when Christian Kirk got his money. Like, what are we doing? Like, how are we paying 2s, maybe even 3s in some offenses, the money we're paying Christian Kirk? But in all fairness, he played well last season. Now, I'm not saying he's a 1 because I still don't think he is. But in that offense, he did what a 1 needed to do. And he was dynamic and he was a playmaker. And I think that, to your point, Calvin Ridley will take over that natural 1 role. But they still need Kirk to produce that 1A or that high 2 caliber if that offense is going to do what it needs to do. But, gentlemen, I'm surprised no one took the 5th greatest rushing quarterback of all time and his receiving duo. And I mean, let's be honest, Mo, what can we honestly expect from Chicago this season as far as their passing game? I know, and I pick on Fields a lot, and he is super athletic. He really, really is. And he's going to put up numbers in various forms this season. But Mo, what can we expect from the passing game from the Bears this season? Do you think they're going to take the next step? And by next step, I just mean solid progression. I'm not talking about Fields being, a top 10 passer in the NFL this season, but are you going to see him progress enough to where you're like, okay, he's putting it all together? Or do you expect to see more of the running around and the dink and the dunk? And every now and then we'll get a, oh my gosh, because he has an arm. But what are you looking for?
I think that they're going to live off of the short passing game, the intermediate routes. I don't think they're going to make things complicated for him. I think the offense is going to be very vanilla. You're going to get a lot of bubble screens, traditional screens, swing passes to the backs. They have playmakers on that team, but I don't think his reads, his ability to look downfield and go to his reads is quite there yet. And his default, he'll always go to his legs first. If that first or second read isn't there, he's taking off. My guess is, barring injury, he's going to come close to rushing for 1,000 yards again. And I think he'll take a step forward in his progression in terms of recognizing coverages, going through his reads. But I don't think they're going to be an explosive offense. I really don't. They made a good move by adding an offensive lineman in the draft, and they tried to add some other guys in free agency. But I just don't think they're going to be an explosive offense. Like you said, he's an incredible athlete. He'll be explosive, and maybe his overall numbers will be impressive. I don't know if that's going to translate to wins, though.
Yeah, I think he's a highlight guy. I think that, and I get it, Mo. You hear, the couple receivers, couple offensive guys in Chicago have come out and be like, oh, it's night and day. The way he's leading the team now, he knows the playbook front and back. And I hear that stuff sometimes, and I think to myself, Mo, he's a franchise quarterback. He should be leading your team. He should know the playbook front and back. I mean, these are simple little things where if my franchise quarterback isn't the leader of my team, if my franchise quarterback doesn't know the playbook front and back, that's an issue for me, Mo, isn't it? Like, aren't these like baseline things that you expect from the guy who's supposed to be leading your team for the next 10 years?
Sure.
So, I mean, come
I
on.
really think that. So, like you said, what you're looking for is signs that he's actually taking a progression and development as an actual quarterback, and not everything is predicated on his athleticism, right? That's what I would say, and I get what the wide receivers are saying. It's like night and day. But what are they gonna say? They're his teammates. What they're not gonna say is this guy's pretty much the same guy as was last year. They're not gonna say that, even though they might know better. I don't think anybody disputes his talent or the potential of what he could be. What I would say is all these people that think the Bears are going to be close to winning the division or they're going to be on the other side of the 500, I just don't see that, not yet. That doesn't mean that he won't improve, but I think, like you said, you're going to see a lot more highlights versus consistency.
And then JG, the other team that wasn't really talked about, and you know, on this show, you break the hearts of some Denver Bronco fans because you don't always say the nicest things about QB1 Russell Wilson. But let's be honest, JG, he doesn't have. I mean, it's great that they put Judy on this list, but we have no idea when Judy's going to play. He's not looking like he's playing week 1. He might miss the first few games this season. Hamstrings are tricky, you know that. So it's great that he has Sutton there, but who else is he throwing to? Like, and I get it, you know, they blow out, they have a big blowout win in the preseason, and Sean Payton's coming out rah about the tight ends. Stop it, JG. These tight ends are not going to do that in a regular season game. In all honesty, what is this Denver offense going to look like the first month of the season while we're waiting for Judy to get back to full speed?
Well, this is what I'll say, and I'm very big supporter of Sean Payton. Obviously, this time in New Orleans, there's been a lot of times when we had a 7, 8, 9 win team in New Orleans because certain things with our defense or the offense sometimes just didn't click as often. That's what this is going to look like in Denver. This is not going to be this is first off, the division they're in is really tough. You have the Chargers and you have the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. So it's not like it's not like you're in the NFC South where you're going to be one of the top 3 teams competing in a yearly basis, kind of like what they had in New Orleans during the time that Sean was there. Mostly, this is a whole different animal they're competing in. I'm not high on Russell Wilson for what he has been. I know there's been a lot of comparisons throughout his career of Drew Brees with Russell Wilson, but there's the talk of it is the only closest thing you can have. And he has kind of fallen to the point where you look at it and say, he's not the same quarterback that was playing in Seattle, that was helping, and again, not leading. I've never looked at Russell Wilson as the one who led the Seattle Seahawks during their runs to Super Bowls. He was helping the team to get to that point because it was led by the run game and it was led by the defense. Denver has the defense. Denver does not have the same run game that Seattle team did in those runs in the Super Bowl. That's a problem for Russell Wilson. And I know Javonte Williams is a good running back coming off the ACL injury, though. But Samaje Perine, a decent running back. But that's about it. The injuries to the receiving core is going to absolutely hurt. Jerry Jeudy down for a little bit with a hamstring. That's going to be nagging, too. That's a nagging injury that's going to last at least 6, 7, 8 weeks through to the season. Once he comes back, if it's week 2 or week 3, he's going to be dealing with that for quite a while. It's not something that's going to go away, and he's going to be back 100%. It's a nagging injury. I'm not high with this group, and you're going to see them. Thankfully, they have the Las Vegas Raiders in this division, because if they were not in this division or somebody else, you could talk about Denver being the last place team again. With the Raiders being a dumpster fire, that's going to save the Denver Broncos from being a last place team. So they'll be a third place team. They're going to be better than what they were because, again, Nathaniel Hackett absolutely made it a god-awful job last year. They'll be better than last year because of Sean Payton, but that's about the end of the line on that. They're going to be a third-place team. They're not going to be that competitive. I just don't see it because of who their quarterback is. Russell Wilson is not him. He's not the guy that's going to be the one that takes this team to another level. That'll challenge Kansas City, let alone challenge the Chargers in this situation for this division. And it's going to be a struggle because of him. And there's going to be some decision-making processes here going to happen at some point. They're going to have to. If they expect Sean Payton to turn this team around and be a Super Bowl contender or even a division contender, They need somebody under center that's going to be able to do that. I don't see Russell Wilson being that.
Well, I was muted there. Mo, I want to at least acknowledge the fact that Josh Jacobs has ended his holdout. He will be with the Las Vegas Raiders, $12 million, 1-year deal. So, Mo, we look at the Raiders now, and at least we can say, hey, all the pieces they wanted to have for this season, it looks like they're going to have. So they're going to have Garoppolo at quarterback. They're going to have Jacobs. They're going to have Adams at wide receiver. Obviously, those are the talking points on their offense. Defense, there's a couple of people over there. But Mo, like in a perfect world, what is the ceiling for the Raiders when it comes to wins? Do they have a chance of not being in the basement of that division? In a perfect world, could they potentially be the last wild card team? Like, I know we all know where we think it's going to go, but what is the ceiling for this team if just everything falls realistically the way it could?
I think the ceiling is that they would actually be ahead of Denver in the division, because whatever people say about Jimmy G, we can all agree he's the kind of quarterback, he doesn't lose games. He might not throw for 300, 400 yards, but when he's complemented by a good run game, and now you've got Jacobs back, and he's got a dominant receiver on the outside and Devontae Adams, they have the potential, at least offensively, to be a solid team. And while their defense isn't stout, the best help to that defense is Josh Jacobs. He keeps them off the field. If Josh Jacobs is going to put up another 1,500-yard season, that means that defense is not on the field extra plays. So I would say the ceiling for the Raiders is maybe, and I would think this is very competitive, if they're just slightly below 500 and ahead of the Broncos, which isn't impossible because right now, today, they've got a better run game than the Broncos do.
Hey, that's a very true story. Gentlemen, let's pivot a little bit, and we got JG here, so we need to talk a little Major League Baseball. And before we get into the Mets, JG, this is actually kind of connected. I want to talk about Thor real quick. Noah Syndergaard was DFA'd by the Guardians, and is this the end of the road for him, JG? Like, he's been around since he left the Mets. He's bounced around. He hasn't really pitched great. He was all right, I guess, for the Dodgers for a short period of time, but nothing compared to what he was supposed to be with the Mets and what he actually was early in his career with the Mets. So two questions. One, is this the end for Syndergaard as far as, having a major league career? And then two, to piggyback off of that, what the hell went wrong? Was it injuries? Did he just lose a step? Because literally, when you get the name Thor and you have that persona with the New York Mets, to fall to where he has fallen to as still a relatively young pitcher in the game, I mean, it's a big fall from grace, JG.
So think about it in this way, and I've actually talked to people about this. Go back to that New York Mets rotation that it had Matt Harvey, Noah Syndergaard, Jacob deGrom, Steven Matz, and Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler really is the last one who's actually still pitching relatively well. I know Matz is still pitching pretty well right now, but not to what he was supposed to be doing in his career. Matt Harvey, out of baseball. I believe he's out of baseball. He's done. Noah Syndergaard is, at this point, on the last leg of his career, and Jacob deGrom just had Tommy John surgery. The common denominator of all three of those guys, will just go Harvey, deGrom, and Syndergaard. When they were at the beginning stages of their career in New York, they were 95, 96 miles an hour pitchers, 97 tops miles per hour. The Mets' philosophy, they've turned them into, we got to get you throwing 100-plus miles an hour. Syndergaard started throwing 100 miles an hour. Harvey started throwing 100 miles an hour. deGrom started throwing 100 miles an hour. They did things to their bodies that they could not hold up on. And that's what you see where the injuries of Syndergaard really came back and caught up to him. Matt Harvey was not the same when the injuries started hitting him. They released him. They DFA'd him at one point, and he bounced around through his career as well. And now you're seeing the same thing with Noah Syndergaard. The philosophy, what the Mets did for during that time frame, and Steven Matz was the same. Matz got through a lot of injuries too.
And Wheeler started pitching better the moment he got out of New York, because the philosophy that the Phillies have had for him has been a little bit better than what they did in the Mets organization. There's a lot of issues that took place in that organization with the pitching side of what they were trying to do. They tried to turn guys who didn't throw 100 and say, you have to throw 100 miles an hour. And I will say this, it's not just the Mets. A lot of Major League Baseball teams had the same philosophy, because that's what the analytics said. You have to be successful in today's game. You have to throw 100 miles an hour. You have to be able to throw the ball as hard as you can and be able to pitch every pitch 100 miles an hour as much as possible. The problem is the human body cannot sustain that on a long-term basis. When you're paying somebody $100+ million or $200 million, you need long-term sustainability. But they didn't get that out of Matt Harvey. They didn't get that out of Noah Syndergaard. They didn't get that out of Jacob deGrom. New York Mets did. And then when they went to the next team, it was too late. And that's the problem with Noah Syndergaard now. It is too late for him, because he bounced around. He was with the Angels, then he went to the Dodgers, he went to the Guardians, and now he's will he get another chance? Possibly one more. Just because of, he can be an innings eater. You're not expecting him to win you games, but just be a spot starter. Go pitch in the bullpen. Maybe a bullpen appearance opportunity could be something that could help him in the long term for the next 2-3 years to keep him in the big leagues. But as far as an effective starter, that hasn't been the case for Noah Syndergaard in a long time. Is an effective starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. He can be someone that you can kind of just spot start, get you 4 innings, 5 innings maybe in the bullpen, and go from there with it. But as far as an effective starter, Noah Syndergaard's career is just about over, and I don't know. He may get another chance. I don't see it from a lot of teams are going to be calling him that much, kind of what Matt Harvey went through. And now, like I said, Harvey's done. DeGrom, thankfully, he got his big contract with the Rangers, and he's going to get opportunities still. But if he's kind of heading down that road a little bit more right now too, that if another injury pops up, which he's already had 2 years, this is year 3 of injuries in a row for DeGrom, that you could have the same conversation with Jacob deGrom another year or two. That is it worth the contract now? Is it worth having him in there, because the injuries just continue to go? That's what happened with Syndergaard and where we're at today. And like I said, as a starter, no, he's not a starting pitcher anymore. He could be a bullpen arm, but that's about it.
If I am the agent of Noah Syndergaard, and I am confident that he has enough juice to pitch an inning of baseball every 3 or 4 days, I am literally calling teams and being like, listen, picture this. Thor comes out of the bullpen. He drops the hammer in the 7th inning and gets a hold. It writes itself, JG. Like, this whole Thor persona with the hammer, we still got this has legs. This has legs to be a bullpen reliever.
Yeah, the days of Thor, though, I don't think Syndergaard is. You have to look at it and say the next chapter. I think it's not Thor anymore. I mean, I'm not all that in tune into the Marvel world as far as what the post Thor was or whatnot. But we're kind of past that with Syndergaard right now. I think just the velocity is not the same. The electricity of his pitches are not the same. So you're kind of just hoping. You're hoping you can get something at least for an inning, but for the marketability, sure, I think, and you can get a team could be able to market that pretty well. But the effectiveness of what he is on the mound, I think those days are done. Syndergaard needs to put the hammer in the shed and kind of call it a day on that, and just hopefully he can find a job that can make him be an effective pitcher in Major League Baseball.
I think Thor's the kind of guy that puts the hammer on a pallet bed. I see him as a pallet bed hammer kind of guy. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. But JG, while we're talking about the Mets, while the Mets were selling off their pitching staff before the trade deadline, there was rumors that Alonso might be, moved. Apparently, some teams called about it. There was no official offers, but there was some constructs of offers made. And the Mets basically said, no, we're not interested. We want to build around Alonso. We kind of see him as a stabilizing force. And we were kind of looking at it as baseball fans being like, well, it's not like he's 23 years old. But okay, whatever. Like, you want to keep somebody on your team that has some name value, so that's fine. But then the reports come out this week or the end of last week that, there's a very good chance the Mets are going to move Alonso in the offseason. And they're also very open to having conversations and moving guys who are not signed past next season, which would make sense for a total rebuild team. Because any guys who are on one-year deals only have 1 year left in their contract, get them out, get whatever value you can as you're really looking forward to the future. But again, we look at this, JG, and we're like, well, hang on, because the Mets also said that next year isn't going to be a wave the white flag kind of year. It's going to kind of be start the rebuild process, but they still want to be JG, what the hell is going on? Are we rebuilding? Are we not rebuilding? What are we doing?
The Mets are being the Mets. I mean, this is an organization that's been this way for a very long time. And we talked about with Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen thought he can walk into Major League Baseball, said, I have the biggest checkbook. I'm going to win a World Series here in the next 5 years. It doesn't work that way. And I think they don't have a plan. When they talked about they had a plan at the deadline. Well, yeah, we're going to trade Scherzer, we're going to trade Verlander, we'll kind of unload the big deals, and we're going to have a plan that's going to help us be competitive in the next 2-3 years. Well, now we're finding out that wasn't the case because, again, you have Alonso, which Alonso should have been traded. The value of Pete Alonso at the deadline was higher because you have a team, and Milwaukee Brewers were the one team that was reported interested, and Brewers have prospects. They have major league talent that you could have acquired that could help you in your rebuild for the next 2 years, for next year and in 2025, that could have turned your franchise a little bit more in that direction of the future competitiveness that you were wanting. Why they didn't, I cannot fathom why. Because now you press the pause button on it by not trading Alonso, and you're hoping you can get the same value that you are wanting out of him in the offseason, because that's reported. They're going to trade him in the offseason now. So is the value going to be the same? The value is not going to be the same. Because you had a team desperate, like let's just say, again, the Brewers, desperate to try to compete with the Dodgers and the Braves in this postseason. They were going to give you something that was going to make you very, very happy. So you want to build Alonso, but you want to build around Alonso, but you didn't want to. But then you want to commit to him long term after this season. You don't want to commit to him to say you're going to be the face of this franchise for a long time. Which direction is it then? Are you wanting to compete in 2026? Are you trying to compete in 2024, 2025? There is no plan in Queens right now. They have no idea which direction as far as how long a rebuild, when do they want to start the rebuild, how do they want to start the rebuild, who's going to be around in the rebuild. They have no idea. And I think there's going to be some shakeup. I think at this point now, I realize I've kind of looked at it. There's going to be a shakeup in the front office because there's just not a lot of trust. It sounds like from Steve Cohen that the people in the front office are going to know how to handle this rebuild and the duration because Steve Cohen basically lied to the Mets fan base. He lied to the Mets fan base saying, we're going to be a competitive team, championship team. And then now all of a sudden here we are, we're talking about rebuild. So he has to face that fan base, which in New York, I know it's not the Bronx, but my goodness, it's still New York. It is a dangerous fan base. They are not happy about what's going on because they were lied to by the owner that they're going to be a championship contending team. So they have to figure out a lot of different things going on. They got to figure out the front office part, but at the same time, is what are they going to do in the rebuild? How long is the rebuild, and who's going to be here in the long term? Because the next question is going to be what about Francisco Lindor? Is Lindor going to want to stay around and be part of this rebuild? He has no choice with the long-term contract he has, but how happy is he going to be? He signed with them. He came to New York to be a part of a championship contending team, and now you've basically just said, "Nope, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to take some time." There's going to be a lot of decision making. There's going to be some changes, and it's going to be a very bad struggle for the New York Mets for quite a while because you have the team like the Braves who are young and exciting and the best team in baseball right now. Philadelphia Phillies have been competitive still the last few years. They were in the World Series this past season. Marlins are kind of getting themselves figured out a little bit, and that's pretty. And if the Marlins can get them figured out, my goodness, that's not going to make the fan base even happier because the Marlins have been one of the most dysfunctional franchises in Major League Baseball for quite a long time, and they look like they are the most compared to the Mets, one of the most stable franchises right now. So there's some things that are going to have to be decided on. Steve Cohen is going to be in a very tough position. Basically, as the old saying goes, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place right now.
And JG, I mean, first of all, over here in the Bronx, we get lied to all the time because we're told every 3 weeks by Brian Cashman that we have a championship team and we just got to be patient. So we know what getting lied to is like. We just apparently accept it, and while being in last place. But that's another conversation for another day. JG, what is the market for a Pete Alonso or even a Lindor? Lindor, his contract it's massive. He isn't necessarily a spring chick. So is this a situation where the Mets are going to move these guys and have to eat money to make it happen? What can they realistically expect back if they're able to move these guys or any other veteran names this offseason?
So you look at, and I don't mean to keep bringing the Braves up, but look at the Braves when they traded for Matt Olson. And I know Alonso's a little bit more of a name, based off the home run derbies. He's been in it and won. He's a little bit more nationally known. But the Braves traded, it was 3 prospects. One of their top prospects, it was one of our catcher prospects we had. I can't remember what his name is all of a sudden. But we traded 3 prospects. One of them was a top prospect. We threw in one of our top pitching prospects, Kyle Muller, and a third prospect is a sweetener. So I think that's kind of what you're looking at for Alonso. Maybe three prospects. 2 of them going to be top 5 in your farm system. I think that's going to be necessary to be able to do because, again, the notoriety of Pete Alonso is a lot higher than what it was for Matt Olson coming from Oakland and playing in the Oakland A's organization to playing in the New York and being what he is. So it's a little more notoriety. So you're going to have to trade at least 3 prospects to be able to get Pete Alonso, but you're going to have to sign him long term too. So a team that's going to commit long term, much like Matt Olson did with the Braves after he got traded, they signed him to a long term deal immediately. A team's going to have to do the same thing. They're going to trade for Pete Alonso and then turn around and figure out what the financials are going to be for him in a long term deal. That's going to be what's going to hold this up a little bit more. Because, again, Matt Olson was not known nationally what he can do. He was not known outside of Oakland a little bit, in regards of him as a talented player. Pete Alonso is known nationally, and that notoriety does mean more money. So a team's going to have to commit financially a little bit more. Northbound is going to be about, if I had to take a guess on the financials for Pete Alonso, minimum 185, something around where Freddie Freeman got. I know Freeman's a much better player than Alonso, but again, notoriety means something to teams. So you're going to have to start the conversation at 185 to maybe $215 million is what you're going to be committing to Pete Alonso in the grand scheme of his contract details. So trading 3 prospects and then committing that kind of money is going to be the conversation you're going to have a team that's going to be wanting to do so. I'd have to do some research to see what teams out there are going to be looking for a first baseman to do that. Milwaukee could be. They were interested. They need somebody kind of like a Pete Alonso. So Milwaukee, I don't know if they're going to have the financials to be able to do that, or they're going to want to commit to it financially. But that could be an interesting team to throw in. I could even throw Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers, they're happy with their first baseman right now, but you put Pete Alonso in 2024 with a lineup of Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia, and they're one of the best offenses in baseball this year. You put Alonso in that lineup, that could be pretty scary to think about. So there are some teams that could be interested in the trade. And Mets and Rangers already made a trade this year for Scherzer. So there's already been dialogue and conversation on how to do a deal. So that could be something to look at. For Francisco Lindor, it's a little bit more complicated because the contract is already set. He's 29 years old, so he's not too old. He's not he's not in his 30s, or he's not going to be in his mid 30s as a shortstop. He still has a few years left to be a good shortstop. The problem is he's not been what we've seen him in Cleveland throughout his career, the last couple seasons here in New York. So that's a hard sell. You're going to have to find a club that's going to be interested in him, and then figure out how much money is the Mets eating of that contract, because the team's not going to take that deal in. And so you're going to talk about Steve Cohen having to eat money off of Verlander, Scherzer, and Francisco Lindor's contract. I don't care. He's one of the richest owners in baseball. He's not going to be happy to have to eat money, pay somebody to go play for another team. You have to figure that part out. That's going to complicate things. And I don't think they're going to make that deal this year. And I don't even think even after 2024 either. That's more of a 2025 trade that you're going to have to just figure out and say, hey, we are committed to a rebuild. Lindor, we appreciate your time. This isn't working out for you. This isn't working out for us. We have to go in a different direction. So that's probably a 2-year down the road, 2025 type of trade they're going to have to make, just because the financials are going to be the hardest part to get a team convinced to make that trade for Lindor. Otherwise, if you can figure that part out, I could see Lindor being the trade. But are you really wanting to eat that much money after just doing that for Verlander and Scherzer? I don't see Steve Cohen wanting to do that already this early in his tenure as a Mets owner.
Business is business, and I think that, and one of the things that you mentioned, JG, that I think that Mets fans should be happy about is that because he is a businessman, I see him having a quicker fuse when it comes to his GM situation. Business usually produces results, and even though he hasn't really done it the baseball way since he came in, I do think he does have that analytical side to him to be like, listen, if my GM's not getting it done, I don't see him keeping people around on the GM side of things if they aren't producing results. So that is one good thing, because as a Yankee fan, I'm sitting here with Brian freaking Cashman, like, what the hell are we doing over here with this guy? But it is what it is, and I digress. But like you said, JG, I mean, to have the visions of grandeur that he had coming in, putting together the roster that he did, which I think most baseball fans said, okay, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, man, what is that going to look like? Well, here we are. Here we are looking at what that looks like when literally it just blows up in your face.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I looked at the Mets. And I also being a NL East guy with the Braves as a Braves fan, I watched the Mets quite a bit. If you watched them in 2022, they had a lot of good fortune go their way, that a lot of teams did not get, and that's partly why they won over 100 games. This game. What I love about baseball is the game always balances out. And if you had all that good fortune your way, the ball bounced your way so many times, it doesn't always do that. And that's what happened to the Mets this year. The reality of what they were came down crashing hard on them. And you see that they are not as talented as what their record was last year. That's the reality. And again, I know DeGrom was a different pitcher for them than what Verlander. Again, the age is everything is a factor on that. The talent level of Verlander compared to DeGrom was there. Just the injuries kind of caught up to DeGrom again last year as well. But that team was not as talented as what their record was. The Braves played, if we talk about it too, the Braves played very god-awful for the first half of the season last year. So that did help kind of, tilt the scale in the Mets' favor in 2022. Now you throw in this year, Braves came out on fire, and they are the best team in baseball. The Marlins are actually a better team this year, too. The Phillies were struggling last year as well. They played a little bit better this one. So you had teams playing better in 2023 compared to yourself as being the Mets and not playing as well. And that kind of put the reality of where they're at. So there's a lot of issues with this roster if you actually paid attention to how it was constructed and what their flaws were at the end. From August to the end of September and going into October, if you watch the Mets in 2022, their biggest issue was they could not produce runs. They could not drive in runs. Well, they didn't add anybody to a lineup that can't drive in runs to a lineup that can't drive in runs. And that was the same problem this year, that you had one guy in Alonso who was driving in runs he catches slumps. And he caught a slump for a while. Lindor wasn't driving in runs. You don't have anybody else protecting Alonso, and guess what you're at? You can't do your job. So there was a lot. I mean, I don't see how baseball minds that are in that office thought that team was still going to be a contending team, and those who are telling Steve Cohen, yeah, this is a contending team. This is going to be go make yourself look like a fool and say that you have a roster that's going to win a World Series. Go make yourself look like a fool. Yes, you have that right now here in Queens. They did. And we're seeing it firsthand that they're a last-place team in the NL East right now. And that's saying something with the Washington Nationals being in the middle of their rebuild right now. So there is some – I mean, heads are going to be spinning. You're talking about what's going on in the Bronx. Heads are going to be spinning in Queens probably faster right now. And that's not a good thing for anybody in the Mets organization.
And as we sit here, Mo, on August 28th, 2023, with both New York teams in last place, and up until right now, because he just did it. He got through that entire segment, Mo, without smiling, without gloating, without boasting about it. And there it is at the end. There it is at the end.
The sun is shining brighter. The birds are chirping. The songs of the birds is beautiful. I mean, my goodness, there's nothing better than the New York teams. Both of them are in last place in the end of August right now. One more month. I need one more month to stay that way. And I am popping champagne to celebrate.
And with that, I think it's time for JG to head on out of here and enjoy the rest of his day. JG, as always, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much for stopping by the morning show.
As always, guys, I appreciate it. Love doing this with you guys. All
right, we'll see you next time, sir. Mo, last place for both New York teams. Like, what is going on, man? It's crazy. It's crazy over here. But Mo, let's pivot a little bit. And hey, we're gonna do something that we don't really do here on the morning show. We're gonna talk a little WWE. We don't do it much.
We don't.
But let's have a quick wrestling conversation, Mo. As wrestling fans know, we had two sad moments this past week. We lost Terry Funk, and then we lost Bray Wyatt. Obviously, terrible situations for both of their families. And our thoughts and prayers here at the morning show go out to everyone who was impacted by the passing of those two individuals. And Mo, coming out of Friday Night SmackDown, heading into this past weekend, there was a little bit of an uproar in the wrestling community about how WWE handled Friday Night SmackDown. So if we look back to the passing of Chris Benoit and the passing of Eddie Guerrero, and we'll start with Eddie. So when Eddie passed, I think we found out about it a day or so before Monday Night Raw. I could be wrong. It was a while ago. But what happened was Monday Night Raw essentially became a tribute show for Eddie Guerrero. There were still matches, but the matches that took place were superstars who wanted to wrestle, who wanted to perform in honor of Eddie. There was no storyline stuff. It was a lot of interviews with people sharing Eddie's stories. It literally was pivoted just around Eddie Guerrero. Then you fast forward to Chris Benoit. That situation happened before we realized what actually took place with Chris Benoit. And that show was a memory show. That happened. Benoit did that on Sunday, I think that happened. So right into Monday Night Raw, they didn't know the circumstances around his death. And I don't believe there was any matches on that show. I think it was just a remembering Benoit, sharing stories about Benoit, that kind of vibe. So you fast forward to this past Friday, and fans were asking, what's it going to look like? WWE mentioned, hey, make sure you tune in. And they alluded to the fact they were going to pay tribute to Wyatt. So we were kind of wondering, is it going to be like the Eddie show? Is it going to be like the Benoit show? What is that going to look like? And it was a little different. So part of the show was dedicated to Terry Funk. Cody Rhodes did a special thing for Funk. They had a special hardcore match in the honor of Terry Funk. The main event of the show was in honor of Bray Wyatt. It was The Fiend's first opponent versus Wyatt's last opponent. But there was also storyline stuff done. They have a premium live event coming up this weekend. So they were still doing, stuff related to storylines to move the story to their next premium live event. And that's kind of where the fan uproar came from. Fans were upset that there wasn't more love for Terry Funk on the show. They felt that it skewed more towards Wyatt. And then fans were also upset that there were even storyline matches at all. Their viewpoint on it was, why are we even worrying about storylines? Two people lost their lives. Why isn't the focus just on telling stories, people coming out with their shirts or their armbands or whatever it is, and just straight up tributes to them? There's a lot of opinions on this, Mo. Where do you sit as far as, were they respectful to the two men that passed away? Were you okay with what took place? Is this just a lot of, you can't make everyone happy, so no matter what you did, someone's going to criticize it and think you did too much or you think you did too little? Where does that all kind of sit with you?
So the storyline stuff really didn't bother me so much. I mean, like you said, they've got a big main event coming up, a big pay-per-view. So you kind of have to have that going forward, right? You have to kind of set things up going forward with those storylines. The tribute to Bray Wyatt was great. And anybody that is a wrestling fan, one of the great storytellers, one of the great characters and great performers I've ever seen. And he did that in such a short span. He didn't have it wasn't a 25, 30-year career, but he gave you so much in such a short span. So it made it a little bit more heartening. The loss is devastating for both performers. But Bray Wyatt is of this era. He's of the new era. So I get why maybe he got a little bit more love. What I would say is, yes, I would have liked to see it a little bit more skewed towards Terry Funk, because what people don't remember about Terry Funk is he is from that old school era. He's from Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. Terry Funk was headlining when he was in his 50s. He was still a headliner in his 50s. He was that kind of a wrestler, that kind of iconic performer. If you're a younger fan, you missed the very best version of him. But if you're a wrestling fan from being a kid to right now, you saw some iteration of Terry Funk. He was that kind of performer. He's what they call a wrestling lifer, much like Ric Flair. I think he was performing well into, he might have been performing well into his 60s before his demise. So I was disappointed that he didn't get a little bit more love. But in the bigger picture, like you said, Chris, it might just be as simple as you can't make everybody happy. You've got to show respect and love to what Bray Wyatt did for your company. You've got to keep the storylines going because of the pay-per-view. And you want to acknowledge the icon from another era, Terry Funk. And sometimes you just don't have enough airtime. It might be as simple as that. So I can understand a lot of fans' frustrations, but I thought they did a pretty good job overall.
And I agree. I also think they did a pretty good job overall. And Mo, I'll say this, and this isn't meant to be a hot take, and it's not meant to be disrespectful. I think it's meant to be honest. If Bray Wyatt did not pass away last week, I don't think we see much on that show for Terry Funk. I think we see an opener remembering his life. We might see a video package at some point during the show. Remember, they flew Cody Rhodes in. He wasn't going to be there. They flew Cody Rhodes in just to do that. If Bray Wyatt doesn't pass away, do they still fly Cody in? I don't know. Maybe if Cody wants to have that moment because he does have a personal connection there and it is with his family, maybe that moment happens on Raw, the following week. And maybe they don't necessarily bring him in for that SmackDown. I honestly believe if we didn't lose Bray Wyatt, you wouldn't have nearly seen the tribute-esque type stuff that we saw for Terry Funk.
I agree 100%.
I think once you lose Bray, who, by the way, is a current employed performer, I think that needs to be said. Something goes for that. He spent his entire career in WWE. Funk is a legend. I take nothing away from him. But he didn't make his name in WWE. And he hasn't been in WWE for a very long time.
Right.
So to honestly think that, the WWE was going to dedicate that kind of time to Funk, if it was just Funk, I think that's not being honest with yourselves. And I also think that WWE realized, hey, we can't do an entire show to Bray and not acknowledge Funk, because that is disrespectful.
Sure.
So I definitely think that there were those internal conversations of, guys, there's no way we can not acknowledge a legend who died a day before or 2 days before, even though we weren't necessarily going to be doing a big thing for him originally. But it just looks bad if we do all this stuff for Bray and then we act like, Terry never passed away.
Chris, to your point, if Bray doesn't pass away, they would have probably showed you a big giant image of Terry Funk and it would have said from this date to this date, right? And it would have said WWE icon or something like that. And it would have been that quick. It would have been a quick acknowledgement. And while we didn't want to lose either of these great performers, Bray's passing actually allowed for more acknowledgement of Terry Funk than he would have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Mo. All right, let's pivot out of wrestling and let's talk some NBA. Mo, there's an Olympian. His name is Noah Lyles. He is very successful as a Olympian athlete. But he is not a fan favorite in the world of the NBA right now because he took to social media and took some shots at the NBA and the NBA players because, Mo, he has an issue with NBA players referring to themselves as world champions. He believes, and I'm going to just kind of expand upon his initial tweet, but I think I have a right to do this, and I think I would be in the wheelhouse of his belief system. He believes that an NBA player, and I would even assume he would feel the same way about Major League Baseball, NFL, NHL, sports that are predominantly played here in the U.S. or Canada, North America. He believes, and he even said in his tweets, world champion of what? World champion of the United States. So clearly he has an issue as an Olympic athlete who competes against other athletes from around the world. He has an issue with an NBA player who wins the NBA finals calling themselves a world champion. And Mo, but before you give your reaction to that, it's fair to say that baseball does the same thing. The NFL has done the same thing. I don't hear a ton in the NFL, but I have heard it in the NFL. I hear it all the time in baseball. I don't watch a lot of hockey, so I don't know if hockey refers to themselves as world champions, but it's not just basketball that does it. Mo, do you have an issue with Noah?
What I know of him is I believe he just recently won the 100 meters.
He did.
And
He is a world champion.
The fastest man in the world right now. I think he might have won the 200 as well. He might have doubled up on those two things. So I acknowledge that. Without sounding like I'm banging on track and field. I watch track and field, but if I lied to you, if I said I watch track and field all the time of every event, let's be real. The reality is most of us don't watch track and field till the world championships. Some of us don't even watch track and field until the Olympics roll around. It's an event thing. It really is. So I have a lot of respect for what they do and the dedication all those athletes put into their careers. But basketball is kind of like our sport, right? I'm talking about this country, as is football, as is baseball. So if the Denver Nuggets want to call themselves the world champions, to me, they are the world champions. The NBA is the very best league, right? It's the highest order of competition in basketball. The best players from other countries, if they want to elevate and go to another level and play against the best competition, they come over here to play in the NBA. So him taking shots, I'm not sure he's a big enough star to where it even matters. It might matter within track and field. It might matter to track and field junkies. But I'm not sure any NBA player would be like, did you hear what Noah Lyles said? Because my guess is most of them would be like, I don't even know who Noah Lyles is. I don't know who that is. Who cares what he said?
No,
as far as they know,
he's
some
wrong.
guy that got cut from the NBA and couldn't make it. They don't know who that guy is. He's the fastest man in the world, and I guarantee you more than half the NBA has no clue who he is. So I don't think they're offended or bothered by his comments at all.
And Mo, I get where he's coming from in the sense of you accomplished something incredible. You've accomplished something that you've probably been working the majority of your life towards, right? He's probably been doing this since middle school, high school, collegiately. When track and field is your arena per se, this is as big as it gets. The Olympics is the end all be all for you. It's the equivalent of making the NBA and competing in NBA finals, making the NFL and competing in a Super Bowl. So I get that this is his version of that. And again, I take nothing away from him. I think this is just a situation where he was a little in his feelings. He became a world champion, and maybe, and I'm just speculating, maybe he wasn't receiving the praise that he thought he should receive. Maybe he didn't feel like he was being, or his accomplishments were being viewed on the level that he felt they should be viewed, because he poured his entire life to get here, literally reached the top of the mountain as
Sure.
far as what he can do in that athletic realm. And clearly he felt a certain way. when he's a world champion and then he sees basketball players being called. So I get it. I think it was just an emotional reaction to what some stuff he had going on the inside.
To be fair, he's a world champion, and he should be acknowledged for that. Like you said, what they go through, this started when he was in middle school on this journey that he's taken, and a lot of these great track athletes go through. But the pinnacle of the NFL is winning a Super Bowl. The pinnacle of the NBA is winning the NBA championship. The pinnacle in track and field is not the world championships. It's winning the gold in the Olympics.
True.
So while he may be the fastest man in the world and he won the world championship, until he wins the Olympic gold in the 100 meters, that's not the pinnacle. He hasn't reached the pinnacle of his sport. So he could very well get to the Olympics and lose, and then what would he have to say?
He wouldn't say nothing, Mo.
Right, he'd be very, very quiet. So I'm acknowledging that he is currently the fastest man in the world, but the pinnacle of his sport is the Olympics.
Speaking of world basketball, Team USA is just strolling along in world competition, Mo, kind of proving that maybe they are world champions if we're going to throw the title out there. But not everyone on Team USA is the happiest. Brandon Ingram is happy they're winning, but he seems to be a little frustrated by his role with Team USA. He was aside from the fact that he spoke about it, which I would say, isn't necessarily politically correct, keep those things in-house.
Right.
But once he chose to speak about it, I feel like he handled it well. He was very politically correct while talking about it. He said that I love the fact that we're winning. I love what we're doing as a team. But I just feel a little lost right now. I wish I could contribute a little more. I wish I was more a part of the process. So those are all really nice ways of saying, put me in, coach. Play me more, coach. Let me touch the ball more, coach.
I want to get up more shots, coach.
Right. Those are all, that's basically what he's saying, but he's trying to say it in a really nice way, because when you haven't lost yet, you can't come out and be like, well, I think you should be coming through me. Right. That's a little tone deaf. That's a little Stephon Diggs. So he didn't want to go that route. So I understand that, Mo, but what are we doing here? Come on, man.
I think BI is a little frustrated, and I don't want to go as far as Stephon Diggs either, but he is treading towards that, right? So who's getting all the shine right now? Anthony Edwards is, because he's been clearly their best player. Another guy that's getting a lot of shine, Austin Reeves. But to be fair to Coach Steve Kerr, when you're juggling talent like this, and a lot of these guys are usually the best players on their teams, and you're asking some of these guys to come off the bench in different roles, they aren't going to get – their numbers are not going to be what it is. Brandon Ingram's not going to average 25 points a game for this team. He's not going to be the focal point of this team, not because he's not a gifted player, but just because how they're playing, the style of play. Not to mention, Steve Kerr also wants to put in guys that balance out defensively as well. That's not been one of BI's strengths. So I just think that he's a little bit frustrated because other guys are getting a lot more shine than he is. But like you said, when you haven't lost, you can't really just come out there and go, I'm only getting like 5 shots a game. You know how much I normally average? I'm just saying. So I can understand BI is a little frustrated with being lost. And don't forget, even though this is the World Championships, Chris, everything these guys do, especially these guys that are 25 and under, it's about their brand, right? Mm-hmm. It does impact their brand. You're not going to get a commercial if you only play like 10 minutes a game and average 9 points a game. You're just not. It's not going to bulk up your brand at all. So I think it's a combination of things. But if I was BI, I would just tread light, be part of this winning process, then go back, get ready for training camp, and come out like gangbusters and get committed to trying to win the pinnacle of your profession, get into the playoffs and compete for a championship. Not being a reserve on Team USA and you guys end up winning gold, that's what matters, winning that gold. That's something to brag about. Don't get concerned with who's the leading scorer or who's getting more attention than you. Just, sometimes just be a good teammate. This kind of goes to a larger discussion that we've had before. On his team, he's arguably the second best player. On this team, he might be the 6th or 7th best player. That's how it is.
And to your point, Mo, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to win the gold medal. You want to refer to yourself as a world champion on the world stage, going back to that conversation.
Sure.
So you have to be a part of that process. And I get it. I get the building the brand. And I think that when you have these younger players, one of the things that they lose sight of is the world basketball game is not the same as the NBA basketball game. So when you're going out there on a world stage and you're competing against all these different countries, you're not going to run it back like you would if you were just making, teams on the playground with the NBA players and you're just playing against NBA talent. Like it doesn't work that way. If Steve Kerr coached it that way, they wouldn't be undefeated right now. He understands the finesse and the nuance and how you have to change your system from an NBA system to a world basketball system. And some things would work, some things don't work. And he's figuring all that out and he's trying to balance all that. So, but that's hard. Like you said, when you're 23, 24, 25 years old and you got a brand and you're the guy and your team and you're the guy in your home city. And now you're coming to Team USA and this guy's from LA and this guy's from over there, but you still want to be the guy because you want the shine. And now you're like, I don't play that. I don't play that much here, coach. Like, I get it. They're all competitors. They're all alphas, and they're all coming from that spot of being a 1 or a 2 on their team. But sometimes you just got to look at the bigger picture and be like, we're winning. Let's do this thing. Because the most interesting thing about this is that basketball fans, especially if one of your guys is on the team, you're all in while it's going on. Like you are all in. You're like, look how my guys looking. This season's gonna be great once the NBA season starts. Let's get that gold medal. They win it. You're all there. Then it ends, and we don't talk about it again. We don't talk about it again until they do it again. Once the NBA season starts, no one's gonna be like, well, he won a gold medal 3 months ago. Like the conversation is over at that point, Mo. And and I get it. Perspective is tough for younger players. But he needs to understand that once he goes back to his team, he is that guy again. And he better be putting up 25 a game because if there's a hangover because he was shunned on Team USA, no one wants to hear about that.
And don't forget, look, a lot of these front offices, when their guys go out there to play in the World Championships, they're like, I hope he only plays like 9 or 10 minutes a game, right? Like, let's just be real. A lot of them are like, and with his hit, look, he's been banged up the last 2 or 3 years. With his injury history, I'm sure the Pelicans front office is like, I like the amount of minutes this guy's playing. That's perfect amount of minutes. They're not thinking it'd be great to win the World Championships, but it's even better that your guy comes back unscathed with no injuries.
They're texting Kerr, hey, you're up big today. Don't even put him in. You don't even got to put him in today. We're okay with it. We won't be mad at you.
You know how many text messages he probably receives from different front offices?
Like, why are you running Ant that hard?
Right. Why is Ant playing 28 minutes? What's going on?
We see what you're doing, Kerr.
Right.
Mo, it is a pleasure like always, sir. Absolute pleasure. What a way to kick off Monday morning here, kicking off the sports week. Mo, you got some exciting news? Are you part of something new and exciting this week?
I'm actually going to be starting on the afternoon show. I think I'm a part of that. The funny thing is, I really found out like at the last minute, but
hey,
I had no clue. Like, you know how Freddie's got a habit of the CEO of Sports Empire Network. He's got a habit of going at everyone, right? He does. And so most of the time, because I'm not up in the chat constantly, I just kind of brush off at everyone.
Well, this at everyone said Mo's on the afternoon show. So
yeah.
Make sure you tune into the network later on this afternoon to catch Mo on the afternoon show. Really excited for the afternoon show. They're going to be on a few hours after us, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 12 Central, I believe. But, hey, we want to continue that sports conversation all throughout the day here at the network. So if you tune into the morning show or maybe you keep missing the morning show because it just doesn't work for your schedule, but then you're sitting there eating lunch by yourself in your office cubicle and you wish you had, the soothing voices of the network to talk sports into your ear. Well, hey, we got you covered with the afternoon show. So make sure you tune in this week for the debut of the afternoon show. Mo is going to be there. There's going to be some other great talent there as well. But that's a wrap to start off the week. So on behalf of myself and Mo, take us out. Last 10 seconds is yours.
Hey, thanks for everybody that tuned in the chat. Smash that like button, share the show, and check out Cheap Seats later on this evening at 6:30 with Kyle and the guys. Check out the Empire. Appreciate you.
And Mo, we'll be back here once again tomorrow morning with the Coffee and Sports Morning Show with Chris and Mo. Until then, see ya.